Sophia Chen thought she was just bringing a lost stranger in from the storm. But when he whispered the name Gabriel Sterling, she realized she had stumbled into a mystery that could shatter one of the city's most powerful families. The rain fell with a steady persistence, each drop pattering against the cobblestone streets of Willowbrook, as if nature itself were composing a mournful song. The lamps lining the narrow road glowed like golden halos in the mist, their light shimmering in the puddles that formed at the edges of the sidewalks. Inside the small flower shop, tucked between an old bakery and a bookstore, Sophia Chen stood at the window, gently arranging the last bouquet of white roses for the night. She pressed the delicate petals into place, her wool cardigan wrapped tightly around her shoulders against the draft creeping through the cracked door. The air was fragrant, lavender, jasmine, and the earthy musk of damp soil, a perfume of comfort that had defined her grandmother's shop for decades. Sophia's hands moved with practiced grace, each placement deliberate. She had been raised to believe that flowers spoke when words failed, that an arrangement could heal the unseen wounds of the heart. Tonight, though, her own heart stirred with unease. She glanced at the rain-slicked street, her gaze catching on a flicker of movement beneath the wavering light of a lamp across the way. A man stood there, motionless, his figure blurred by the curtain of rain. He was drenched from head to toe, the shoulders of his expensive-looking coat torn, his hair plastered against his forehead in disheveled strands. But it was his eyes that arrested her, the hollow, searching look of someone not just lost in the city, but lost within himself. The sight tugged at her, awakening the same instinct her grandmother had once spoken of, the call to kindness that comes when another soul is adrift. Sophia hesitated only a moment before reaching behind the counter for the large black umbrella she kept by the door. She pushed it open against the wind, the raindrops drumming on its canopy as she stepped into the downpour. Her boots splashed against the cobblestones as she crossed the street, the lamplight shimmering across her path. "Excuse me?" Her voice was soft but carried through the rain as she approached. The man flinched slightly, as though yanked back from a foggy dream. When his gaze met hers, she saw gratitude flicker in those storm-colored eyes, mingled with confusion so raw it almost broke her heart. "You're soaked," she said gently, raising the umbrella over both of them. "Come inside, please. You'll catch your death out here." The man swallowed, his lips pale, his voice rough with cold. I think I'm lost. I can't remember how I got here." Sophia's brows knit with concern, though her tone remained calm. "Then let's get you warm and dry first. The rest we'll figure out together." As she guided him toward the shop, neither noticed the city bus that hissed to a stop at the corner. The driver, Henry, leaned an elbow against the wheel, his familiar eyes watching from the shadows of his cap. Henry had known Sophia for years, exchanging nods whenever their paths crossed in late evenings, but tonight his gaze lingered on the strange man stumbling under her care. He frowned, noting the tremor in the stranger's steps, the disorientation in his movements. With a sigh, he shifted the bus back into gear, making a mental note of what he had seen. Inside, warmth enveloped Gabriel as the door closed behind them. The shop glowed with lamplight, the shelves and baskets overflowing with blossoms that softened the world with color. Water dripped from his coat, pooling on the worn wooden floorboards. He looked around, his chest heaving with both exhaustion and the faint stirrings of recognition, though the memory danced just beyond reach. Sophia handed him a towel and gestured toward the chair by a small heater. "Sit. I'll make tea." He obeyed silently, clutching the towel with hands that trembled, not from the cold alone, but from something deeper, a fracture inside him that refused to mend. He tried to reach for answers, but his thoughts were fragments, scattered and jagged. One moment stood clear, a family dinner at the Sterling mansion 3 nights ago. After that, only shadows. When Sophia returned with a steaming cup, he accepted it gratefully, his fingers brushing hers briefly. A jolt passed between them, startling in its intensity. He cleared his throat, staring into the rising steam. "My name, I think it's Gabriel. Gabriel Sterling?" Sophia tilted her head, studying him. The name seemed to weigh on him as if both anchor and burden. She chose not to press further, sensing his fragility. Instead, she smiled softly. "Then Gabriel, you're safe here. Rest. We'll untangle the rest when you're ready." Gabriel sipped the chamomile tea, the warmth soothing his raw throat. As he sat there surrounded by roses and lilies, he slid a hand into his pocket. His heart jolted when he felt a small crumpled card. Pulling it free, he smoothed it against his knee. The words read in delicate cursive, "Petals and Dreams. Sophia's shop." His pulse quickened. Why had he been carrying this card before he even met her? What invisible thread had already tied his fate to this flower shop and to the girl who had pulled him from the rain? He storm lingered over Willowbrook through the night, drumming its secrets against the window panes of petals and dreams. Sophia had settled Gabriel on the couch in her upstairs apartment, layering him with blankets while he drifted between restless dreams and half-formed memories. The shadows seemed to press closer around him, whispering fragments of something he could not piece together. Voices, laughter, then sudden silence. When dawn broke, pale light spilled across the lace curtains, and Gabriel's eyes fluttered open, as though the day itself had called him back. Downstairs, Sophia was already at work. Every morning at sunrise she arranged new flowers for the shop window, her ritual, her inheritance from her grandmother. Today she hummed softly, fingers weaving crimson roses and delicate baby's breath into a bouquet for a wedding delivery. Gabriel watched her from the staircase, still wrapped in the blanket. The sight of her, so calm, so certain in her world of blooms, felt strangely anchoring, as though she were a fixed point in the chaos of his fractured mind. "You look better this morning," Sophia said, glancing up and offering him a smile. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much," Gabriel admitted, lowering himself into a chair. "Dreams? No, memories maybe, but they come like smoke. I can't hold on to them." Sophia poured him a cup of coffee, setting it gently before him. "Sometimes smoke leads you back to the fire," she said softly. "You'll remember." As he wrapped his hands around the warm mug, a sudden image slammed into Gabriel's mind. Silver hair pulled back tight, eyes like frozen steel, a voice hissing his name with fury. He stiffened. "There was a woman. She was angry with me. I can still hear her shouting about responsibilities, obligations. Her eyes, cold." His voice faltered, as though speaking her into existence might summon her shadow into the room. Before Sophia could respond, the shop bell chimed downstairs. The sound was ordinary, yet in that moment it struck Gabriel like a thunderclap. He froze, every muscle tense. Sophia moved to greet the customer, but paused when she saw the man who had entered. Henry, the town bus driver, removed his cap and tapped it against his leg awkwardly. His weathered face was wet from the drizzle outside, but his eyes were clear and sharp. "Morning, Miss Chen," he said with his usual respectful nod. Then his gaze drifted to Gabriel, lingering with unspoken recognition. Sophia's brows lifted. "Henry, you're up earlier than usual." "I was hoping to catch you," he said, lowering his voice. "That man, your guest, I saw him last night, wandering near the bus station. Looked like he'd been dropped there, not walked on his own. Couple of men came off an alley nearby, talking low. I couldn't catch much, but I heard one of them say, 'He won't remember a thing by morning.'" The color drained from Gabriel's face. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles whitening. Sophia's heart skipped as the weight of Henry's words filled the room. This wasn't just amnesia. Someone had done this to him. Henry glanced again at Gabriel, then back to Sophia, his expression solemn. "I don't know what kind of trouble he's in, but it didn't look like some accident. Thought you ought to know." Gabriel's pulse pounded in his ears. Shadows sharpened into forms, the bitter taste of a drink, the sound of glass clinking, laughter that wasn't warm, but mocking. Then blackness. He pressed his fingers to the tender spot behind his ear, wincing at the ache. "They drugged me," he whispered hoarsely. "Someone wanted me gone." Sophia stepped closer, her voice calm despite the storm now brewing in her chest. "But why? Who would do that to you?" Gabriel's mind fought to push through the fog, fragments cutting sharper now, rawing blood from memory's edge. He saw a long dining table, candles flickering, papers spread before him. He had been speaking passionately about something that mattered deeply to him. And the woman, her voice rising, furious. He shut his eyes, forcing the words past his lips. "It was my stepmother, Victoria. She didn't agree with me. I was about to expose something she was hiding." The shop felt suddenly colder, the air thick with dread. Sophia's instinct was to protect, to shield him from whatever storm awaited, but even she knew the rain-soaked stranger in her care wasn't an ordinary lost soul. He carried weight, secrets tied to power, betrayal, and danger. Henry adjusted his cap again, glancing between them. "I'll keep quiet, Miss Chen, but if those men come sniffing around, you call me. I saw enough last night to know trouble's not done with him yet." As the bus driver left, the shop bell jingled with deceptive cheer, but its echo felt ominous. Gabriel turned toward Sophia, his eyes dark with both fear and determination. "They tried to erase me, but if I don't remember soon, they'll finish what they started." And in that fragile silence that followed, Sophia understood. Their lives had become entwined by something larger than chance. The rain had brought him to her doorstep, but the storm that followed would test everything. Her compassion, his courage, and the truth they were about to unearth. The rain had lessened by afternoon, But Willowbrook still wore the gray veil of stormlight, the streets slick and gleaming like polished stone. Inside Petals and Dreams, the scent of lilies and fresh coffee filled the air, yet beneath that warmth, a sense of unease threaded itself between the flowers and polished wood. Gabriel sat hunched over the counter, running his thumb across the edges of the crumpled business card he had found in his pocket. His own name still echoed strangely in his mind. Gabriel Sterling. Familiar, yes, but also heavy with something he could not yet carry. Sophia moved quietly around him, placing tulips into slender vases, glancing at him in between her work. Her concern was clear, though she tried not to smother him with it. Compassion, her grandmother always taught, was not about drowning someone in pity, but about giving them enough strength to stand on their own. Still, she could not ignore the worry that pooled in her chest. Who had left this man broken on her doorstep? The bell over the door chimed, breaking the hush of the shop. A gust of damp wind swept in as an older man entered, his presence commanding attention immediately. He was dressed in a tailored gray suit that whispered of wealth and influence. His silver hair swept neatly back, his eyes sharp with both intelligence and fatigue. He paused only a moment before his gaze landed squarely on Gabriel. "Mr. Sterling," the man said, voice steady but laden with relief. Gabriel stiffened, recognition sparking like flint striking stone. "Thomas," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "Thomas Blackwood." Sophia blinked, startled by the name, watching as Gabriel rose slowly, as if bracing against a tide he couldn't hold back. The man, Thomas, crossed the shop quickly, lowering his voice. "Thank God you're safe. Do you have any idea what you've put everyone through? When you disappeared after the board meeting 3 nights ago, Victoria nearly had the police searching every street in the city. Everyone feared the worst." "Board meeting?" Sophia echoed, confusion lacing her words. Her gaze flicked to Gabriel, whose eyes had grown darker, more distant. "Yes," Thomas confirmed. "The Sterling Foundation. Gabriel is its rightful head since his father's passing." He studied the young man, his face creased with concern. "But you don't look well. What happened to you?" Gabriel pressed a hand to his temple, fragments of memory sliding jaggedly into place. "Victoria," he whispered. She offered me a drink that night. Champagne, she said, but it tasted strange. After that, nothing. Just shadows, and then I woke up in an alley." Sophia's breath caught. Her instincts had screamed of foul play, but hearing it spoken aloud was different. It was real. Thomas's jaw tightened. "Then it's worse than I feared." He cast a sharp glance toward the shop door before leaning closer. "She called another board meeting in your absence. She's petitioning to have you declared mentally unfit to lead the foundation. If she succeeds, she'll control everything. Your father's legacy, your inheritance, all of it." Sophia felt her chest tighten, as if invisible vines coiled around her lungs. She had believed Gabriel was simply a lost man in the rain. Now she understood. He wasn't just lost, he was being hunted. "Why would she do this?" Sophia asked softly. Thomas's eyes darkened. "Because Gabriel's plans for the foundation threatened her. He wanted transparency, audits, redirecting millions toward environmental programs instead of the charities she favored. If he revealed what she's been doing..." He stopped himself, his jaw locking. "What has she been doing?" Gabriel pressed. Thomas hesitated, torn between protecting and revealing. "I don't have proof yet, but money is missing. Millions. And if you had pushed your reforms through, the trail would have been uncovered." Sophia's hand moved instinctively toward Gabriel's, her touch grounding him against the whirlwind of betrayal crashing around him. She saw the anguish in his eyes, not only at the thought of being drugged by his own stepmother, but at the realization that the legacy his father had built was being twisted by greed. Before Thomas could say more, the shop bell chimed again. This time the man who entered was taller, broader, with a weathered face carved by years of hard truths. His overcoat dripped with rain, and his gaze was sharp, assessing every corner of the shop before settling on Gabriel. "Detective Harrison Wright," he introduced himself, pulling a badge from his coat. "Mr. Sterling, I've been investigating your disappearance." His tone was even, but his eyes betrayed urgency. "And I think I know who's behind it." Sophia felt the air in the shop shift, tension thickening like the storm clouds pressing against the glass. Gabriel turned toward him, his jaw set. "Say it." The detective's voice was steady, deliberate. "Your stepmother, Victoria Sterling, has been seen meeting with Marcus Vale. He's a man with dangerous connections, blackmail, disappearances, debts that end in graves. If she hired him to arrange what happened to you..." He let the words hang heavy in the air. Sophia's stomach clenched, the weight of it almost unbearable. This wasn't just a family dispute, this was conspiracy. Gabriel sank back into the chair, running a trembling hand across his face. shadows of memory sharpened now into something crueler. Victoria's triumphant smile as the glass touched his lips, the laughter of strangers as his world went dark. The DT. Ketiv's gaze softened, but only slightly. If you want justice, we'll need proof. Proof of the drugging, proof of the theft, and you'll need to confront her. The words fell like iron in the silence. Sophia, her heart pounding, knew what Gabriel's answer would be before he even spoke. His deep blue eyes met hers, haunted but resolute. "I'll face her," Gabriel whispered. "But this time, I won't face her alone." The Sterling mansion loomed against the twilight like a fortress built to keep out the world, and perhaps, Gabriel thought grimly, to keep its secrets locked inside. The iron gates creaked open at his code, and Sophia's modest car rolled cautiously up the winding drive. The oaks that lined the path stood like ancient sentinels, their bare branches clawing at the bruised sky. Every window of the great house blazed with warm light, but there was nothing warm in the welcome waiting behind those doors. Sophia sat in the driver's seat beside him, her hands tight around the wheel. She tried not to stare at the looming facade, yet she couldn't help but feel dwarfed by its grandeur. Marble columns guarded the entrance, and stone lions crouched on either side of the stairs, as though daring intruders to approach. "This is where you grew up?" she asked softly. Gabriel's eyes lingered on the mansion, but his expression was far away, shadowed. "Part of the time, but after my mother died, it felt more like a mausoleum than a home." His hand brushed his shirt collar absently, where the hidden wire pressed cold against his skin. Sophia glanced at him, catching the strain etched in his features. She reached for his hand, squeezing once. "Remember, you're not walking into this alone. Whatever happens in there, you're not alone." His blue eyes met hers, and for the first time since he had woken in the alley, he let a flicker of vulnerability show. "That might be the only reason I can walk in at all." The massive front door swung open before they could knock. Victoria Sterling stood framed in the golden light, her elegance calculated to the last detail. Her emerald silk dress shimmered, her blonde hair arranged in an immaculate twist, her smile practiced to perfection. "Gabriel, darling," she exclaimed, sweeping forward with a theatrical embrace. "You've come home at last." Gabriel endured her touch stiffly, every muscle taut. He caught Sophia's eye over Victoria's shoulder, and Sophia saw the truth he dared not voice. "This woman drugged me. This woman tried to erase me." Victoria finally pulled back, her gaze flicking toward Sophia with cool curiosity. "And who is this?" Gabriel's voice was even, steady. "Sophia Chen. She's the one who found me, helped me recover." Sophia offered a polite smile. It was the right thing to do. Victoria's smile sharpened, her eyes flashing with condescension. "How charming. A florist's kindness. Well, come inside. We have much to discuss." The parlor was everything Sophia imagined of old money. Mahogany furniture, velvet drapes, oil portraits of stern ancestors glaring down from gilded frames. The air smelled faintly of brandy and polish, a place built on legacy but hollowed by pride. Victoria sank greenless, gracefully into a leather chair, gesturing for Gabriel and Sophia to sit on an antique sofa opposite her. She poured herself a measure of brandy, swirling the amber liquid with languid confidence. "Gabriel, the board has been terribly concerned. Your disappearance raised questions about your stability. I've had to reassure them, but they need to see proof that you're capable of resuming your duties." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "I had a head injury, Victoria. Confusion doesn't mean incompetence. I'm perfectly fit to lead." Victoria laughed lightly, but it was the brittle sound of glass under strain. "Oh, darling, fit? You were babbling nonsense about tearing down your father's legacy, redirecting funds into ridiculous environmental causes and shelters for vagrants. That's not leadership, it's delusion." Gabriel leaned forward, his eyes sharp as steel. "You mean it's dangerous? Dangerous because those audits would have exposed where the money has really been going." Sophia's breath caught. The room seemed to still, as if the portraits themselves were listening. Victoria's mask slipped just slightly. "I have no idea what you're implying." $3 million, Gabriel said coldly. "That's what you've stolen from the foundation over the last 5 years. That money was meant for children, for the elderly, for families in need, and you funneled it into your own accounts." Victoria's glass trembled in her hand, though her smile didn't falter. "You poor boy." Still confused. "You must be hallucinating." But Sophia, watching closely, saw it, the tiny twitch of Victoria's jaw, the way her knuckles whitened around the glass. She was rattled. "I remember everything now," Gabriel pressed, his voice quiet but deadly. "Including the champagne you gave me at that board meeting. It wasn't celebration, it was poison. You wanted me out of the way. You thought I'd disappear quietly, never to remember a thing." For the first time, the veneer of elegance shattered. Victoria's eyes flashed with fury. "You ungrateful fool," she hissed. "Do you think your father built all this for you to squander it? I protected this family's legacy. I did what was necessary." "You drugged me," Gabriel shot back. "You hired Marcus Vale to dump me in an alley like garbage. You tried to erase me, Victoria." Sophia's heart pounded. She knew the wire beneath Gabriel's collar was catching every word, but she also knew a cornered animal was at its most dangerous. Victoria's face contorted with rage, her voice rising. "Your father adored your mother more than me, more than life itself. 15 years I stood at his side, treated like a ghost in my own home. Don't you dare speak to me about betrayal." Her hand shot out suddenly, seizing a crystal decanter from the sidebar. With shocking speed, she hurled it toward Gabriel's head. Sophia didn't think. She moved. Throwing herself forward, she shoved Gabriel out of its path just as the decanter smashed against the wall, shards exploding across the marble. A jagged piece grazed her forehead, leaving a thin line of blood. Gabriel caught her as they fell, his arms wrapping around her protectively. "Sophia!" His voice cracked with fear, seeing the cut on her skin. Victoria stood trembling, her chest heaving, her mask of refinement obliterated. "You have no idea what you've done," she spat. "The board will never accept that little nobody by your side. You're finished, Gabriel." The door to the parlor burst open. Detective Wright strode in, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. His voice was calm but edged with triumph. "On the contrary, Mrs. Sterling, we have everything we need." He held up a small receiver, the red light blinking. "Your confession was more than enough. You're under arrest for embezzlement, conspiracy, and attempted murder." Victoria's face went wet. Then red with rage. She lunged again, thrashing as the officer seized her arms and clamped handcuffs around her wrists. "You'll regret this, Gabriel," she screamed, her voice echoing through the grand hall. "This family will turn its back on you. You'll be nothing without me." Gabriel rose slowly, pulling Sophia gently to her feet, his arms still around her waist as if anchoring her to him. Blood trickled at her temple, but her eyes burned with defiance. "My father taught me that love and character matter more than bloodlines and money," Gabriel said firmly, "and for the first time, I understand what he meant." Victoria's voice rose to a shriek as she was dragged from the room, still ranting, still fighting, but her power was gone, her empire of lies collapsing around her like a house built on sand. In the silence that followed, Gabriel turned to Sophia, his hand trembling as he brushed a curl back from her face. "You saved my life," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Sophia managed a small, fierce smile. "I just did what anyone would do." But in Gabriel's heart, he knew, no one else ever had. The echoes of Victoria's fury still lingered in the cavernous halls of the Sterling mansion, long after the heavy front doors closed behind her. Her shrill protests and venomous curses had faded into the night, carried away by Detective Wright's patrol car. Yet inside the parlor, the silence that remained was heavier than any storm. The smashed decanter glittered like fallen stars across the marble floor, the scent of spilled brandy mingling with the copper tang of Sophia's blood. Gabriel held her face gently, his thumb brushing the thin cut at her temple. His hands trembled, not from fear of his stepmother's wrath, but from the thought of how close he had come to losing her. "You shouldn't have been here," he whispered hoarsely. "If you hadn't pushed me aside." Sophia caught his wrist, steadying him with her calm strength. "If I hadn't, you'd be bleeding on this floor instead of me. Don't waste time regretting what's already done. We survived. That's what matters." Her words, so simple, carried a weight that anchored him. He had spent his life surrounded by people who measured worth in power and wealth. But in Sophia's voice there was no calculation, no demand, only truth. For the first time in years, Gabriel felt seen not as Sterling Heir, but as a man. Detective Wright approached, his coat still damp from the rain, his face lined with fatigue but softened by relief. The wire caught everything. Between her confession, the embezzlement trail, and Mr. Blackwood's documentation, the board won't be able to touch you. She's finished. Thomas Blackwood, who had remained quietly vigilant during the confrontation, finally exhaled. His shoulders sagged, as though a burden he had carried for too long had slipped free. "Your father would be proud, Gabriel. You stood your ground." Gabriel glanced at the portraits looming above the fireplace, his father's stern eyes staring down through oil and canvas. For the first time, Gabriel didn't feel overshadowed. He felt as though his father's legacy had passed into his hands not by inheritance alone, but by choice. But the night was not over. The board would demand answers, the newspapers would pounce, Victoria's allies would not vanish with her arrest. The Sterling Empire was still in peril, only now its survival depended on Gabriel. As the group prepared to leave, the mansion seemed to sigh, its walls echoing with the collapse of secrets long held. Outside, the drizzle had ceased. The air was cool and clear, carrying the smell of wet earth and the distant perfume of Sophia's shop down the street. The following morning, chaos erupted in the city. Headlines blared. Sterling matriarch arrested for fraud and attempted murder. Reporters swarmed the mansion gates, cameras flashing like lightning. Board members convened in a storm of panic, half demanding Gabriel's resignation, half begging for reassurance. Gabriel walked into the boardroom not as a broken man emerging from the rain, but as a leader forged by fire. Sophia was not allowed inside, but she waited in the hall, her palms pressed together in quiet prayer. Inside, Gabriel's voice cut through the room with calm authority. For years, you've allowed my stepmother to bleed this foundation dry. I will not. The Sterling Foundation was meant to serve, not enrich the powerful. From this day forward, its money will fund the causes my father valued: the environment, the vulnerable, the voiceless. If any of you cannot abide that, resign now. But if you remain, know that we are rebuilding from truth, not deceit. Silence followed. A few board members shifted uncomfortably, but none stood. One by one, they nodded. And just like that, control returned to Gabriel, not because of his wealth, but because he had faced the truth head on. When the meeting ended, he stepped into the hall where Sophia waited. The sight of her calmed him more than any victory. She rose quickly, scanning his face. "Well, it's ours now," he said, voice low but certain. "The foundation, the future. But it won't mean anything if I don't have you in it." Her breath caught, but before she could reply, footsteps echoed behind them. Henry, the bus driver, stood awkwardly in his worn jacket, clearly out of place among marble floors and tailored suits. Gabriel smiled, striding forward to shake his hand. "Henry, without you, the truth might have stayed buried. You heard what no one else did. You're a hero in this story, whether you want to be or not." Henry flushed, fumbling with his cap. "I just did what was right. Don't go calling me a hero." But Gabriel would not relent. Heroes are rarely the ones who seek the title. That's why they deserve it most. 2 weeks later, Gabriel called a press conference in Willowbrook, not in the city's glittering financial district, but in front of petals and dreams. The cobblestones were still damp from a morning shower, the shop windows blooming with color. Reporters buzzed like restless bees, expecting a declaration of dominance, a reaffirmation of wealth and power. Instead, Gabriel stepped to the podium, Sophia at his side, Henry standing humbly behind them. His voice rang out clear, steady. "This foundation will no longer be run from an ivory tower. Its new headquarters will be built here in Willowbrook, next to the flower shop where I was given shelter by a stranger who had no idea who I was. She saved me, not because I was Sterling, but because I was lost. From today forward, the Sterling Foundation belongs not to boardrooms, but to people like her, people who know that kindness is the most powerful currency in the world." Gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras flashed, Sophia's hand trembled in his, but she did not let go. As the applause rose, Gabriel turned to her, leaning close so only she could hear. "You found me when I was nobody. Will you stay even now that I'm somebody again?" Sophia met his eyes, her voice steady with truth. "I didn't fall for the air, Gabriel. I fell for the man in the rain." He kissed her then, beneath the same street lamp where she had first offered him shelter. But this time, the lamp did not flicker, the rain did not fall. The world was clear, bright, and full of beginnings. And for Gabriel Sterling and Sophia Chen, the storm that had once threatened to drown them had instead given birth to a love and a legacy that would outlast even the wealth of empires.